Hey guys, Poor here with another video. This time going over the LCP for summer 2025. I'll be going over all of the roster changes and I'll be power ranking the teams afterwards. So LCP made some changes, but they didn't go crazy the same way that the LPL did. Some of their teams stuck together, some of them swapped a few players here and there, but that's about it. So let's go over these one at a time. The biggest roster change, well, I wouldn't necessarily say biggest, but like the most important roster change that we got was PSG. So first of all, Talon got reacquired by PSG, so the team is now PSG Talon again instead of just Talon, and their acronym changed from Talon to PSG. So it is PSG again, and with the return of the organization, they also have the return of the greatest player to ever play for that organization, that being Maple. PSG has decided to sign Maple after Fofo has stepped down. Now, when I first saw this announcement, I was really surprised because in my mind, this is a massive, massive downgrade, despite the fact that I think that Maple is probably either the best or the second best, assuming that Maple hasn't deteriorated from the time that he initially retired, which wasn't that long ago. Assuming that he's like still around the same level of players, then I would say that Maple is either the best or the second best mid laner in this region, probably second best. I still think it's a massive downgrade because in my opinion, Fofo was by far the best player in this region. And I know that a lot of people will disagree with me on this. A lot of people like to say that it's one of the players from CFO, whether that's Junjia or Doggo or even Hongq. People will say that Hongq is the best player in the region, but despite all of the problems that Talon had as a team, Fofo was an absolute monster. Like in upper bracket, I always reference this whenever I talk about Fofo, upper bracket finals in spring playoffs, Fofo completely destroyed Hongq in that series. It was a 5-game series and CFO ended up winning 3-2, but there was not a single game in that series where Hongq was more useful than Fofo was, and there were multiple games in the series where Fofo was just absolutely destroying Hongq individually. And it's like, look, if you're gonna put Hongq in the argument as best player in the region, and Fofo is just a much better mid laner than Hongq right now, then I don't know, you do the math. But yeah, I think that Fofo, my personal opinion is that Fofo is the best player in this region. It sucks to see him go, so I was a little bit confused about the roster change. Then it came out that apparently Fofo is dealing with an injury. He has, I believe it was a wrist injury, and so he decided to sit out so that he could recover from that, and that makes sense. And I really hope that he recovers soon and then can come back and play, because I don't think his career is anywhere close to being over. I think he still has things to prove. I think he can still come back and be one of the best players in this region. I still want him to represent at Worlds for this region at some point. So that's that roster change out of the way. Then the next one, I guess, to talk about is Team Secret Whales. Even though I have them all in non-italicized here, which means no roster changes, they do technically have roster changes. So for those who don't know, Team Secret Whales just has collected the infinity stones of top laners, I guess. They just keep on buying more top laners, so they now have 3 top laners on their main roster. So they have Hero O2, who's going to be their main one, most likely. We don't know for sure, but most likely Hero O2 will be their main one. Then they have Stellar, who played a few games last split. And then in this offseason, they signed another top laner named Pun. And so we don't know what's going to happen with that. I'm going to imagine that they're going to play with Hero O2 because Hero O2 wasn't actually that bad. Certainly better than Stellar in my opinion. And then maybe this Pun guy will play, but I would guess not. Maybe he will. We'll see. But I'm going to guess that Hero O2 is going to be playing. But I just figured I would mention it. Another thing to mention is that there are a lot of players on this list that actually have 2 or more players playing behind them. So like, for example, the GAM roster. Artemis also has another bot laner named Easy Love that they can play at any time, although Easy Love is not as good as Artemis, so they haven't been using him. They also have another support behind Elio, but I don't remember what his name is. There's a bunch of spots like that. A bunch of teams just have random substitute players, like way more than any other region. I don't know another region that does this. This region, for some reason, is just addicted to the idea of having multiple substitutes, so that's just a thing. Then we get into the teams that placed near the bottom who wanted to go for roster changes so that way they could increase their odds of doing a bit better and maybe qualifying for playoffs and stuff. The first one is Chiefs. They had like a crazy offseason. We had no idea what was going on. We didn't know if any of their players were going to stick around. They ended up sticking with 3 of them, Biopanther, Jimmy, and Luan, and then they signed 2 new players. Their new jungler is Why Not, and Why Not is a jungler who I've been singing the praises of for a really long time now. I think that I first started talking about how good Why Not could be back in like 2021. Why Not was the jungler for, primarily the jungler for Team Bliss in the LCO, which is the Oceania region. I always thought that he was one of the best junglers from that region, if not the best. It was, for me, it was always between him and Pabu were the 2 that I always thought were kind of a step above the rest there, or like had more potential than the rest. I'll talk more about how I feel he's going to do in the LCP when we get to talking about Chiefs, but Why Not is definitely an interesting pickup. I think that in terms of junglers that you could have pulled from the LCO, since this is technically the LCO team representative, I think that Why Not is probably the best choice in that regard. They also picked up a new bot laner. They got Slater, who was a pretty highly regarded bot laner in the VCS. He played for a team called, what was it? It was like SBTC, something like that. I don't even remember what it stands for. There was like some kind of extension, but it was SBTC, and they were a team that had a crazy amount of problems. So they kind of came out of the gate swinging. They placed 2nd in a split. They were looking insane, like they could maybe contest GAM for an international spot. Then they had some massive controversy stuff where a bunch of their players were, I think it was one of those match fixing scandal things where their team just kind of blew up because of that. And then the following split, they were immediately like dead last, lost every game, something like that. But all you really need to know is that Slater is one of the better bot laners from the VCS. There were a lot of people who thought that he should have actually been here already on one of the VCS teams. I don't really agree with that fully. I think that Eddie and Shogun both definitely deserve to be here. I could see an argument for wanting GAM to pick up Slater over Artemis, but it's like a very, very slim argument. Like, if GAM had never gotten Artemis and they had chosen to take Slater over Easy Love, I would have been down for that. I think that Slater is better than Easy Love. I think it's an argument. It's a toss-up whether he's better than Artemis or not. But anyways, that's the type of caliber of player that Slater is, so that is a pretty good pickup. Both of those spots, I think, are definitely going to be upgrades. At least in the long run, they'll be upgrades. Then, DFM have a new jungler. They signed a player named Citrus. I don't know too much about this guy. I looked a little bit into him. It doesn't really seem like he's accomplished much in his career. It doesn't really seem like he's going to be that great of a player, so we'll have to see how that goes, but I don't think this will change much about their team. So that's all of the main roster changes. Again, a lot of these teams have random substitute players that I don't think will play. The only reason why I have 2 top laners listed here and 2 mid laners listed here is because either in the case of CFO, they just play 2 top laners every series, it's part of their core strategy, or they're like GAM where they have 2 mid laners who the team hasn't decided which one they actually want to play with yet. GAM's situation is very different to CFO's situation. GAM is not trying to field a 6-man roster, I don't think. I'm pretty sure they're trying to genuinely figure out what mid laner they're supposed to play with going forward. So with that out of the way, let's talk about these teams. First, PSG, Ozzy, Karza, Maple, Betty, Woody. Ozzy is one of the better top laners in this region. He is a very solid player. He likes to play a lot of weak side, he plays a lot of tanks. He wants to be left alone on an island and find his advantages that way by kind of outplaying 2v1 situations or neutralizing lanes, that type of playstyle. I thought that Ozzy was extremely good in the lane swap meta, so we're talking MSI 2024. I thought that he was great in that meta. Ever since we swapped back to kind of standard laning for the first 5 minutes or so and then a little bit more swapping, I think Ozzy's been weaker. I think Ozzy's base laning phase is fine, but not elite. Whereas I thought that his play when he had to deal with 1v2, 1v3 situations was definitely really good. So he still has that as a strength. He's still a really good weak side player, but I don't think that he's flourishing in this more standard meta as he was before, but I still think he'll be really good. Karza is a player that confuses me. Karza is really good sometimes. For those who don't know, Karza is in the conversation for greatest non-major region player of all time, I would say. He played in the LMS/PCS. Actually, I don't even know if he touched the PCS. Did he touch the PCS? Well, maybe he touched it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he touched the PCS like towards the back end. I don't know if he was there when the PCS like first became a thing. or if he went straight from the LMS to the LPL. But basically, he was in the LMS, he moved to the LPL, and then played in the LPL for a while, and then eventually came back. And in that time, he had a lot of success. I think that Karsa is in the conversation for top 10 greatest junglers of all time. I think he's that good. His last couple of years have been sketchy for sure. I've been seeing horror stories from like 2024, 2023, when I didn't follow the PCS as closely. I saw horror stories of all of the crimes he was committing in the region, as in he was not playing well. When I was paying more attention in this year, he's certainly not the player that he used to be, but I don't actually think he's like solo running down games the way I was led to believe. There are definitely games that he runs down. Like, for example, in the upper bracket finals match between Talon and CFO, Talon was in a commanding position and should have closed out the series with a massive lead in one of their games, and then Karsa went for one stupid play, and then the entire game blew open, and then they lost it, and then CFO ended up coming back and winning the series. It was a whole ordeal that was Karsa's fault. But from watching Karsa play, I actually don't think this guy's bad. I think he is definitely for sure one of the best junglers in this region still, so I have somewhat high hopes for him. Then you've got Maple. I've already kind of said my piece on Maple. I think he's going to be, if he has the same form as before he retired, I think he's going to be a top 2 mid laner in this region, most likely. If he ends up being rusty and playing badly, I could see him losing to Hong Q, to Dyer, to Katie. I could see him losing to maybe even like Arya. I could see him losing to Fate. So there's definitely a chance that he's rusty and he ends up being bottom half. But most likely, knowing Maple as a player, I would say he's probably going to be around 2nd or 3rd. Then we have their bot lane. Betty is a bot laner who was one of the lower tier bot laners from the LPL. He started in the LMS with Karsa on Flash Wolves. Then he moved into the LPL, was kind of mediocre there, but still good enough that he was able to stay there for a few splits. Then he came back to the PCS/LCP, and he's been pretty dominant since then. Right now, at this current moment, I would say that the best bot laner in this region coin flips between Betty and Doggo on any given day. I think that these players both have the ability to be stronger than the other one when they match up, so I wouldn't say it's out of the question that Betty just ends up being the best bot laner in the region. I'm still going to say it's probably going to be Doggo, but Betty and Doggo are on relatively the same level, so for people who saw Doggo internationally, they can expect the same type of play from Betty. Then you have Woody, who's a pretty interesting support, in my opinion. I think that Woody is not a very high ceiling support. I don't think that he has very many insane plays that he goes for, and I think that he makes a lot of mistakes that can look really stupid in the moment or cost his team games. But the one advantage that I give Woody over almost every other support in this region, and I'll touch on that almost later, is that Woody has a very diverse champion pool, and he can play all of those champions to a fairly decent level. So you can essentially draft whatever you want, whatever style of team comp you want, whatever bot duo you want to play, and Woody will be able to manage it, whether it's a defensive lane with a Braum or a Tahm Kench, or if it's a traditional engage lane with Nautilus, Leona, Alistar, or if you want to go for a more lane-dominant lane with like a Seraphine or a Karma. Woody can pretty much do whatever you need him to do, which I value a lot from a support. But he's definitely not the type of player who's going to push above and beyond and break through some of the actual elite bot lanes or anything like that. Then you've got CFO. CFO, they have 2 top laners, so I'm sure that most people who are going to bother to click on this video already know this at this point, but for those of you who don't know, CFO is the one team in all 6 regions that actually have a true functioning 6-man roster. So they play 2 top laners every series on purpose. They have no intention of dropping either top laner for the foreseeable future, to my knowledge. The way that they do it is that 90% of the time, they'll just alternate the top laners. So they'll play Driver in game 1, Rest game 2, Driver game 3, Rest game 4, so on, so on. And the reason why they do this is because their 2 top laners share essentially no champions within their champion pool. Maybe they share like Rumble, and that's about it. But apart from that, Driver will always play the more utility-based champions. So he'll play your champions like Ornn, Gragas, Sion, Shen, these types of champions. And then Rest will play some of the stronger lane-dominant champions. So he'll be the one who will play your Ambessa, or your Jace, or the Gnar, these types of champions. We did see Rest play some tanks internationally, but that was more because Driver was having some issues at the tournament. I don't remember what it was. Either he was like super tired from the flight, or he was injured or something like that. I don't remember which one it was. It was one of the two, or maybe it was a combination of both. But because of that, Rest ended up getting some more playing time than he otherwise would have. But yeah, for the most part, Driver is the utility tank guy, Rest is the everything else guy. I think for these top laners that Driver is a truly elite tank player. I think that when he gets one of his champions, he is fantastic, especially once you get to the mid late game. The angles that he sees, the engages that he goes for, the way that he plans out how he actually wants to play the game is all brilliant to me. I think that Driver has a super, super high ceiling. My only issue with him is that he only plays 4 champions. I know that he used to be on a team by himself and he had a bigger champion pool back then, but he hasn't been asked to play those champions on this team. And since he hasn't played them all, I'm going to imagine that if you asked him to play one of those champions right now, he would probably struggle since he's just not practiced on it at all. So like, for me, that's a weakness for Driver, is just small champion pool. Rest has a bigger champion pool, but in terms of his skill, he's really only about as good as like a top half PCS top laner type of thing back when PCS was still one of the regions that could qualify for Worlds. So I think that in the grand scheme of things, Driver is probably one of, if not the best top laners in this region for what he does. And Rest is probably closer to like scraping into top half, I would say. Then you've got their jungler, Junjia. This is a player who a lot of people would say is the best player in the region. I would not disagree. If you told me that you thought that Junjia was the best player in the region, I would be like, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Junjia is a super stable player. He spent some time in the LPL. Now he's here. Ever since he came to the PCS/LCP, he's always been the best jungler in the region with very little, if any, competition. Then whenever he goes internationally, he's always a big international riser. So at first stand, he had amazing Skarner performances. He looked really strong there. Then he went to MSI, obviously had some extremely good games, looked really good on champions like Vi and Trundle. Junjia is one of those junglers who can kind of play basically anything that you need him to play at a pretty good level. I think he's very similar to players like Canyon or Tarzan. He has that type of atmosphere to him. He's obviously not as good as those players, but he has the same type of energy, at least in this region. He functions as the Tarzan of the LCP in the sense that you can rely on him, he will be your team leader, he can play pretty much anything, and he's always going to be one of, if not the best players here. So Junjia is definitely a big force for this team. Their mid laner Hongq, 18 years old, really young, has a lot of potential, makes stupid mistakes sometimes, can choke winnable games sometimes, but his ceiling, I mean, we don't even know what his ceiling is. He, at both international tournaments, has shown up super, super big. I could see this guy eventually turning into the best player in this region. I personally still think he needs some more time to iron out the mistakes that he does make, but I'm really excited to see how he can improve this summer and then how he'll look at Worlds, assuming that CFO just make it, which they probably will. Then you've got Doggo, who, again with Betty, are constantly the two bot laners who are fighting back and forth for who the best bot laner in this region is. Right now I think it's Doggo. I don't think he's so far above Betty that Betty can't take that spot back, but Doggo is a pretty solid bot laner. He is about what you would expect from the type of bot laner who was like bottom half in LPL. Then you have their support Kaiwing. Kaiwing is pretty good sometimes. The biggest problem with Kaiwing is that he can only play engage. He plays like 5 or 6 engaged champions and has no champion pool outside of that. This is a constant issue that plagues CFO whenever they have to go up against better teams. Luckily for them, in the LCP, there isn't a better team, so they end up not getting punished for this as much. But I think that if PSG can figure out their shit a little bit better, they could be the type of team that could challenge CFO, for example, because Woody has a much bigger champion pool than Kaiwing. And then so once you get to games 4 and 5 of Fearless, I feel like a team like PSG should be able to create better team comps than CFO can. We just haven't seen a team actually be able to contest against CFO at that level. GAM took them to 5 games in spring playoffs, but it was honestly a pretty fraudulent 5 games. I think that most of the people who watched that series would say the same thing, that GAM just kind of got there through miracles. When Kaiwing gets on one of his champions, he's fine. He's good enough at engage. If you take him off of the champions that he can play, it's an absolute disaster. If Kaiwing locks a ranged champion, it is doomed. CFO, for sure, are going to be the best team in this region. Well, I'm not going to say they're for sure the best team. What I mean is They are for sure projected to be the best team in this region. I think that anybody who is power ranking these teams would have to be completely unserious if they were going to put CFO anywhere but first. I don't think they're guaranteed to get first. I think that PSG could contest them. I think GAM on a good day could contest them. I think if Team Secret Whales can figure out their shit and improve really, really fast, I think they are the type of team to have the potential to contest CFO. But realistically, CFO should be first. I think anything less than first place would be a disappointment for them. Team Secret Whales. This team is, in my opinion, probably the team that will be the most interesting to watch to see how they improve. I think this team has a lot of room to get better. Their top laner, Hero 2, combined with their other two top laners, Stellar and Pun. I have no read on Pun whatsoever. I have never seen Pun play a game. I think that Stellar is not very good, and I think that Hero 2 is like, okay. I don't think top lane is this team's strength. I think Hero 2 is fine in the grand scheme of things. I think he's better than a handful of the top laners in this region, but I don't expect anything crazy from him. This team, their main, well, I'm not going to say their main driving force. Their main driving force is their bot duo, but the main thing that keeps this team interesting, at least to me, is their mid jungle of Histo and Dire. These two players are very new. I think that we don't quite know where their ceilings are yet. They both seem like the type of players who could become really good. I know that there were a lot of people who were saying that, like, oh man, when we sent GAM to MSI, they could have done so much better if they just had Dire instead of Emo and Ares. And I actually don't think this is true at all, but I do see where they're coming from. I think that Dire has the potential to be better than Emo and Ares for sure. We just have to see how they do. But yeah, this mid jungle duo, they could be very exciting. I want to see them perform well. Then you have their bot lane, Eddie Taki. These two are both super solid, super stable. I think that Taki has a very nice champion pool in the same way that Woody does. I also think that Taki is just as good, if not slightly better than Woody is at the average champion. Woody does have some pretty crazy moments every now and then that make me think that he's better than I thought he was, but for the most part, I would trust Taki a little bit more than Woody on my team. And then Eddie is a player who, he was out for a while because he had to deal with the whole entire like VCS match fixing scandal stuff. The punishments were different for some of the players. Some of them got suspended like permanently, like they just got banned from the league. A lot of them received a 36-month suspension, so a 3-year suspension, which essentially means that their career is over, but technically they could come back in like 2026 or 2027 or whatever it is. Eddie also received a punishment, but it was a lesser punishment. I think he only got knocked out of the league for like, it was either like 2 splits or 3 splits or something like that, but it wasn't long enough that it ended his career. And now he's back, he's here. I think that Eddie has a lot of strengths that some of the other bot laners in this region don't have. Whenever I watch Eddie play, the biggest thing that I'm always impressed by is his presence of mind in team fights. I feel like Eddie's target selection and ability to decide what he wants to do in the moment is almost top tier. Like it's really good. He has some team fights where I watch how he's playing it, and the speed in which his brain is processing who he wants to click and when is super, super impressive. I think that Eddie is definitely a top half bot laner in this region. I think that this team's biggest strength right now are their bot and support duo. I think they have one of the better bot duos in the region. And I think that this team is exciting because their mid and their top have a lot of potential in them. Team Secret Whales, for now, I'm going to leave them below PSG, but I would like to see this team attempt to make some kind of run for a world slot. Since this region does get 3, I think that this team can maybe fight for that 3rd slot. Vikings is a team that I have a lot of beef with, so anybody who joined me on Twitch when I was watching playoffs, it wasn't a co-stream, of course. I didn't have co-streaming rights, so I couldn't watch their games live, but after the fact, like a few days after playoffs happened, I went back and I watched all the games on stream, and oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure that Vikings is like the #1 team for me to hate watch, which is a shame, because I guess I'll start with the good. This team, in my opinion, has the bot duo with the highest ceiling in the entire region. I think that this bot duo could be better than Doggo Kaiwing. I think they can be better than Betty Woody. I think they can be better than Eddie Taki. I have a lot of faith in these players. Shogun is the most promising bot laner to come out of the VCS probably ever, in my opinion. I think that Shogun is a player who has an insane ceiling, is the type of player who could have been picked up by the LPL at some point and maybe could have found success there. Then you've got Sulong. Sulong is a super new player, but I see so much potential in this guy. When I said before that I thought that Witty had almost the biggest support pool in the region, the player who I was thinking is Sulong. I think that Sulong has a crazy champion ocean. This guy is willing to pick basically whatever he thinks is going to be the best. He plays shit like Pike support, he plays Annie support, he can play every single support that is currently meta. I'm super impressed by this guy. I think that he has the potential to be the best support in this region. I think that in the coming years, he should be the best support in this region. And I would even go as far as to say that for me personally, in Spring Split, he was the best performing support. I don't know how people are going to feel about that, because for the most part, I'm kind of disconnected from the domestic LCP scene at least. So I don't know what their read is on Sulong, but I think that Sulong is super promising. I want to see this guy turn into the best support in this region. Shogun Sulong is a bot duo who I really want to see succeed. Now for the rest of the team. The rest of their team is absolutely doomed in my opinion. My main issue is that I think that Kratos, Guri, and Katie have all kind of topped out. I don't see any of these players ever getting better, and as a result, no matter how much Shogun and Sulong improve individually, I just don't see Vikings getting any better than they are right now. And this team is roughly a 4th, 5th place team, but when I watch them, it just feels so uninspiring. I don't know another word to explain it. It just feels like these players just have no room for growth. The mistakes that they make are the type of mistakes that make me feel like they're not going to improve. The biggest offenders here are Kratos and Guri. I don't particularly enjoy watching either of these players. I don't think that either of these players are good in the context of the region. Katie is fine in the context of the region, but he also hasn't grown as a player in the last like 3 years, which is a little bit problematic to me. Overall, I just view this team as Shogun and Sulong almost getting jailed. I want Shogun and Sulong to join another team, but that's just about it. So yeah, unless Vikings kind of just come out of the gate swinging, this will probably be the team that I will be the most frustrated to watch. I'm going to put them below Team Secret Whales, I think. I could easily, you could argue this for sure. You could argue that Kratos, Guri, and Katie have high enough floors, and Shogun and Sulong have enough potential that they could go third, but I'm going to move them below here. I think that most of these teams will improve to some degree, and I just don't see Vikings getting much better. Then you've got GAM. This is the team that was at MSI, of course. Kiaya, Levi, they've got their 2 mid laners, Artemis and Elio. I think at this point, it's pretty decided that they're going to play Artemis over Easy Love. I don't really see a world where Easy Love comes back. Elio, people probably know this, but I have a low opinion of Elio. I know that domestically, he has this reputation as being super coin flippy and has really, really high potential when he's playing well, but I just don't see it. I don't know. Whenever I see Elio playing a quote-unquote good game where his potential showing through, to me it just looks like a standard support game. And then when he's not doing that, I think it's a dumpster fire and he's losing his team the game. He also has a similar issue to Kaiwing where he has a very small champion pool. I think his champion pool is like slightly bigger than Kaiwing's, but not enough that it actually matters. Elio can kind of play most of the engaged champions and then slip in the occasional ranged champion like a Lulu or something, but that's about it. Kiaya is obviously pretty good. He has a high ceiling. He has shown the ability to contest some of the better top laners in the world. He had some series where he was playing really good against players like Bin, for example. Levi is fine as a player. He's probably a top half jungler in this region. He's obviously not going to get any better. He's been playing for 2 decades now at this point. He hasn't been playing that long, but you get what I'm saying. Levi has a very good eye for the game, in my opinion. Whenever I see GAM play against better teams, it always feels like Levi is one of the players who is able to step up and kind of lead his team to the potential wins or any of the good situations they find themselves in. Levi's biggest issue is that his mechanics are borderline terrible. It kind of makes sense at this point. He's well past his prime mechanically, but you just watch him play some of the champions and he makes very basic mechanical errors, and I think that this can sometimes limit what the team can do or how well they can play. Then you have their 2 mid laners. Domestically, their mid laners weren't that bad. I would say that in spring, Emo was definitely better than Ares. At MSI, Ares was a little bit better than Emo. Neither of them looked good at MSI. This is also not the first time that we've seen Emo at an international, so I remember the first time that he was at an international, I was kind of saying, oh, he's really young, maybe he's got room to grow and maybe he'll get better, but I think we're kind of past that point. They've both been playing for a few years now and haven't shown any of the super crazy growth that I would have wanted to see. So my read on them is that they're probably maybe top half right now, but I don't think it's going to stay that way. I think that by the end of the split, there will be plenty of mid laners who can be better than both of them. Then you have Artemis. I think that Artemis is a fine player. He was definitely one of the best bot laners in the VCS. You had like, I mean, essentially, really, you had Artemis, Shogun, Eddie, and Slater were probably the 4 best bot laners in that region by the time the VCS actually dissolved. So definitely the right picks if you were going to have 4 VCS bot laners here. These are definitely the 4 you'd want to have. But out of the 4, I would say that you could make an argument that Artemis is the worst one. He's definitely not a bad player by any means, and he is definitely better than Easy Love, to me at least. But yeah, I don't expect too many great things from him. So this team, I'm going to move here, I would say. I think that Team Secret Whales could be better than Gam, but I don't think that they're there yet. I think that Team Secret Whales has a better bot lane than Gam, but it's not by much. And then Gam has for sure a better top laner, right now a better jungler, and right now probably around an equivalent mid lane. So I'm going to put Gam here. Even though Gam did beat the Talon with the better roster in my opinion last split, I still came out of it feeling like Talon was probably the team with more potential and the team that I would have been more excited to see at MSI. So I'm going to still put PSG above Gam. I think the expectation should be that PSG is the second best team, and that if Gam beats them, it should be seen as a disappointment from PSG as opposed to the expectation. Then we'll move into Chiefs, the team with the most roster changes. Biopanther, Why Not, Jimian, Slater, Luan. This team, so they were for sure the worst team last split and the split before, but I'm still kind of holding out a little bit of hope that they won't be complete dog shit. I still don't think that Biopanther is that bad. I know that he's definitely bottom half bot laners, if not has an argument for the worst top laner in the region, but I still want to believe that he is good enough to be better than players like Ray Farkey and good enough to contest players like Kratos or Hero O2 or maybe even a player like Evie. I think that Biopanther could reach that type of level. Why Not? I said that he was one of the best junglers in the LCO and probably the best pick you could have gotten to get a quote-unquote domestic jungler for your LCO representative team. But that said, I don't think that Why Not is going to come out being better than basically any of these junglers. He's probably going to be better than Citrus, I would imagine, unless Citrus is just some kind of unknown god that I didn't realize. I don't know. I think that Why Not has been a little bit too far removed from the tier 1 competitive scene. I don't think he's going to come out looking his best. And in terms of potential, I think that potentially he could match a lot of these junglers, but I don't know if one split is going to be enough time. We'll have to see. I would imagine Why Not is going to be like the 6th or 7th best jungler in this region, if not the worst. Then you have Jimian, and man, I don't know what happened to Jimian. Jimian used to not actually be that bad. Like when he was in the PCS, he used to play for some top teams, and he used to kind of have this reputation as being somebody who could stomp lane and play volatile carries and get advantages that way. My biggest problem with Jimian domestically was always that I thought that he was a little bit of a do-nothing player later, but I always thought that his lane phase was good enough to find advantages, but man, he just has not looked good this split, and I don't know if it's because the team sucks, or if it's because he just randomly sucks, but I feel like he has not been playing to the level that he should be playing, and it's definitely in conversation for worst mid laner in this region, even though heading into the split I would have imagined he would be somewhere in the middle. Then you have Slater, who I think is a very Artemis level of player. I think that Slater will come in and be fine. I don't really have too much to say about him. And then Luan is another player where we know that Luan can be really good. There was a brief period of time where Rahel and Luan were looking like a top tier bot duo in the LEC. Then he kind of came here and sat on the Chiefs roster, and everybody on Chiefs looked like shit last split, so my read on this team is really weird because I didn't even think that their roster last split should have placed last. I thought their roster last split was going to place like 7th or something, but they ended up placing dead last. I think that Luan, Jimian, and Biopanther all played worse than they should be playing, and all have the ability to play better. And then I think that Why Not and Slater are both pretty good pickups that should be better than what they had. Like before they had Violet, and then before they had Lemus in the bot lane position. I think that Slater is definitely better than both of them. They had Mir before in the jungle. I think that Why Not is definitely better than Mir. So this team is weird to me because to me, I feel like if Spring Split never happened, I would look at this roster and I would think that they could probably be contesting like 6th, maybe even 5th, that type of realm. But based on what happened in Spring and all of these players just playing worse than I think they should be playing, and the fact that Why Not and Slater are a bit removed from top level competition, I'm gonna keep Chiefs down below everybody else who I just talked about. I still hold out a little bit of hope that they won't be shit and that they can end up contesting for a playoff spot, but they have to prove it to me because they really just did not look good. And then you had DFM, Reef, Citrus, Arya, Kakun, and Harp. This team has a really, really big problem in their bot lane. Whether they play Kakun or Milan, I think that both of them are probably the worst bot laner in this region, and I think that Harp is definitely the worst support in this region, so definitely huge problems for DFM to figure out there. I think that Arya is a fine mid laner for the region. He didn't look as good as I wanted him to look. He is probably bottom half. Actually, I don't even want to say probably. He's for sure 100% bottom half mid laner in this region, but I think that he has potential to maybe not be bottom half. I think he could scrape his way into like 4th place maybe. Ray Farkey I don't think is good. I think he's one of the worst top laners in this region, definitely. And then I have no read on Citrus. I was looking at Citrus's history. I was not impressed by any of the results that he had, but that said, I've never watched him play a game, so I don't know if those losses were his fault or not, so we'll have to see. But DFM, I really don't have any faith in this team. Based on the fact that both DFM and Chiefs looked terrible all year, and the fact that Chiefs, I can see a higher ceiling for their players than what they've shown, and I think both of their roster moves were upgrades, whereas for DFM, I don't really view this as anything more than like a side grade right now. I'm actually going to keep DFM below Chiefs. I'm going to have Chiefs above DFM for Summer Split. I could be wrong, but that's just how I feel. And then finally, the last team, SoftBank Hawks. They've got most of their roster domestically from when they made that random run to Worlds that nobody was expecting. I think that Evie is still a fine top laner for this region. I think he's definitely like minimum 5th best top laner in this region. I also think that Fate is fine for the region. In fact, heading into winter, I said that I thought that Fate was going to be the 2nd best mid laner in this region, right behind Fofo. That's definitely not true, but I still feel like Fate has the ability to be top half in this region. Marble and Gang, I guess, are like okay. Like they're not terrible, but they also don't really inspire much confidence in me, and I think that Courage isn't that great. Overall, I don't have high hopes for this team at all, but I think that this team is going to go here. So this is my read for this region. I think that CFO should be 100% number 1. If they're not number 1, it's a big disappointment for them. PSG and GAM are probably going to be fighting for 2nd in my eyes. I think that these two teams are relatively the same level, but I would like to see PSG be better because I think that PSG's players have a higher ceiling at international tournaments. Then on the outside looking in, so because this region has 3 world slots, and I think that these 3 teams are probably going to be the 3 teams to take them. I think outside looking in, you have Team Secret Wales. This team has the foundation and the potential to be better than GAM or PSG, but it will most likely not happen. I will be excited to see what this team can do. Then you've got Vikings in 5th. I think this is about as high as Vikings can get. Maybe they can scrape into 4th, but I don't see this team being able to contest a world slot at all. I don't see the Hawks being able to contest at all. I would probably put the Vikings in a tier slightly above the Hawks, but these are relatively both in the same area. And then you've got Chiefs, who, depending on how this roster looks, maybe they can contest 6th, but I don't see them going any higher than that. They could also just be dead last. And then I'm going to put DFM in last, based on how they looked in Spring, and then based on the roster changes that both Chiefs and DFM looked for. LCP also has quite an interesting format, so I'll pull that up. So they have essentially 2 groups, so it's a little bit similar to the LPL in the sense that LPL has the main group and then they've got like group Nirvana or whatever, which is where all the lower tier teams go. LCP has a similar format where they've kind of split it into, I don't know, wait, am I even looking at the right spot here? I think I am, right? Yeah, I'm looking at the right spot, but they split the teams into 2 groups. Yeah, here they are. Okay, I was looking, I don't know why. Yeah, this is just the teams that are actually in the region versus the teams that are the guests. They split the team. This is what I was looking at. They're splitting the teams into top 4 and bottom 4. Yeah, I was really confused. I was looking at this. I was like, man, there's no way that Secret Wales is in the guest team. This makes no sense. But yeah, so these are the groups. These 4, these 4. Essentially, the way that this works is that top 2 teams from this group make it to playoffs. Bottom 2 teams from this group get knocked out. Bottom 2 teams from this group and top 2 teams from this group play against each other for, I believe, the last 2 slots in the playoffs, I think is how it works. Let me see. Top 4 teams, bottom 4 teams. Yeah, 4th place from contender faces first from breakout, 3rd faces second. Winning teams will join the contender group, losing teams will join the breakout group. Oh, actually, wait, maybe this doesn't work how I thought it worked. I thought that the bottom 2 teams of this group just got eliminated, but it actually sounds like they don't. Yeah, I don't think that any of these teams actually get eliminated after the first phase. Pretty sure the phase is just going to be double elimination. And then after that, the teams will go to playoffs. And then playoffs is going to be 6 teams. Wait, this format is kind of awesome, actually. Wait. So they're going to play round robins against each other. Then the bottom 2 teams from this group and the top 2 teams from this group will play against each other. And then whoever wins out of those will join the top group, in which they will then be seeded into double elimination playoffs. And then the 2 worst teams from both of those groups get dropped. And then the 3 teams here get seeded into playoffs. And then they play a 6-team playoffs bracket. I like this, actually. And then you can't get eliminated unless it's best of 5. Yeah, this is a really good format. I'm surprised. This is probably, maybe aside from the LPL format, my favorite format in the entire world right now, domestically. So yeah, okay, looking at the groups, if I have the format right, I would imagine it would look something like this. So I'm gonna guess Oysters and Talon are gonna stay in the group. DFM and Chiefs are going to be last, which means that Hawks and Vikings will be the top 2 teams from here. I think that GAM and Secret Whales should beat both of those teams, meaning that heading into phase 2, the group should be the exact same. Then out of this, I guess that Chiefs and DFM would be sent out, and then we'd move on to playoffs. Yeah, this is a pretty standard format. This format's going to do a pretty good job at determining the exact order of all the teams. Yeah, I don't think I have to do any like extra workarounds here like I had to do with the LPL. Okay, so yep, that's going to be it. These are my team rankings. Format's going to do a pretty good job at determining how good all the teams are first to 8. So that's it from me. See you all. Bye.